Well, good morning, everyone, or afternoon for some of you. It, uh, it's a hot, sticky, warm day here in Red Wing, Minnesota, and I thought I'd just jump in here to try out this StreamYard software that, just to give it a quick run before I start the actual podcast. It is supposed to um, be sending out this live stream to both YouTube and my Facebook platforms, but I won't know until after we get done with this, and I'll go see for myself. It's an interesting software program, a little bit on the pricey side, but it is what it is. Um, there's going to be nothing cheap about this. I was about ready to throw in the towel on it because it just seems like you can't get enough people motivated. You can't get enough people engaged. But I'm not gonna. I'm not. I was scheduled for surgery at Mayo yesterday. Had to cancel that because I couldn't afford to put my four-legged kids in a kennel. Hell, I couldn't even afford the fuel costs to go from Red Wing to Rochester and back, and then of course the hotel to stay in after the procedure because you know they were going to keep you inpatient. They didn't want you driving for 24 hours afterwards, so I ended up canceling it. They rescheduled for early July, but it and it was an important procedure. They wanted to go into my lungs and go into get some samples from some different areas that they didn't get samples from in previous times. Um, but I had to put it off, and I tried to get some help with that, but nonprofits are they're not very helpful, at least not for me. They always got a reason why you don't qualify for their assistance. But it is what it is. They certainly have enough to pay themselves $300,000, $400,000 to $500,000 a year salaries at the executive level. But when it comes to providing any assistance, amazingly, they never have any money. It's another issue that we need to revisit. Our nonprofit laws, they they've pretty much remained unchanged for decades, and nonprofit has become really not nonprofit. It's become a business in itself, and but it's it's not one of the larger things that we're. Well, actually, it is because nonprofits' sole purpose is to be there. They get the tax breaks there, or they don't pay taxes at all, because they're supposed to be helping people. They're supposed to be helping people in a way that government shouldn't be helping. That's where that's one of the many areas that we really need to reform our whole way of running this country. The federal government and state governments get involved in things that they shouldn't get involved in because that's what the nonprofit sector is supposed to be doing. They're supposed to be picking up more of the social programs than the federal government does. Or the states. But they don't. They have very elaborate offices, especially at the executive level, and killer salaries. You know, and then I was quickly reminded yesterday when I kept getting rejected from the 10 or 12 people in our agency. It was like all that there was a case involving United Way, I think it was. That was a while back. One of the executives, doesn't happen too often, but she was actually charged with criminally for embezzlement because she used money that was collected by United Way from the generosity of us to buy quarter horses. So you have an agency that routinely, more times than not, says that they don't have funding or they don't have funds available, but yet their executives are embezzling money to buy quarter horses. She ended up in prison, rightfully so. Because she stole a lot of money, and I'm sure she's not the only one. I read about it all the time. There's time and time and time and time again where people in those positions, not just in nonprofit agencies like United Way or some of the other big ones, but churches, churches are collecting. When I first, I went to Catholic schools, and when one of the requirements to go to as part of your class every week was to go to church outside of your typical Sunday mass with your family. And the church would send around the basket once per mass for donations. Now I go to a Catholic church and they send the basket around 3 times. It's quite a racket in a lot of ways. And you got these mega churches that run around and in their jet streams preaching the good word, and it really leaves you wondering what Jesus would think about this. My late wife, she was a Pentecostal minister. She never really had big or nice thoughts about those types of mega churches, because she was always quick to remind you that Jesus himself, he didn't fly around in a jet stream, nor would he have back in the day. Well, back in the day and during his time, the elite traveled around riding, being carried in a carriage, being carried by human beings to walk them from city to city. But not Jesus. Jesus rode a donkey. And according to Scripture, never traveled more than 200 miles from where he was born. He didn't jet around the world or donkey around the world preaching the good word. He was pretty limited as far as his reach was. So it'll be interesting to see how it plays out for those people that end up having to face him when their time comes, and how they're going to explain their need to fly in a Gulfstream to spread the good news, and how that's going to fly. But that's just more part of the mess that our country is in right now. We have a lot of problems, and And I'm still very determined on pursuing an action in federal court. That'll most likely be the last thing I file. I don't know how successful I'll be. It's not going to be well liked by the defendants. But and of course those type of defendants, they have all kinds of resources available to them that I don't. I'm just a simple guy that, like many of you, living day by day without our tomorrow. I can't afford to stay where I'm at. And where I would go from here, I don't know. But one thing that will go with me is my technology. The internet can go with me wherever I go. I'm pretty well connected there. And I have the tools I need to draft, research and draft the pleadings that need to be done to get my foot in the courthouse. What I am lacking is funding. It would be nice to see some people that that have some means to contribute a little bit to help with some of these costs. Because even like the StreamYard thing, this is $39 a month. And then you figure the other internet costs that I have just to stay in contact with people that are paying attention, that are following. At a minimum is $150 a month, and then when we get into the litigation phase where things are actually filed in court, then I think I'll be able to get the fees of the filing waived because of my disability. But that's really not the high cost of litigation. You end up needing ink cartridges. You go through a lot of ink cartridges for printing up the documents needed to file, which obviously they're pricey. You go through a lot of paper. And then, of course, fuel to go back and forth. Hopefully, I end up with a judge that does a lot of his hearings via Zoom. That will cut down on the need to drive back and forth to St. Paul, because that's where I'm going to file. I'm going to file this action in St. Paul, Minnesota, federal court there. And that's not going to be too far down the road. I've already started the research, and I'm pretty comfortable with the causes of action that I'll be pursuing, and the fight begins. It's going to be a challenge, and it's going to play hell on my health. But I just can't keep sitting back and doing nothing. Too many people already doing that. But just thought I'd jump in here really quick. Just to give this StreamYard a quick test. And, yeah, CBS wanting to, they call me every month to see how I'm doing with my Avonex medication, which is an injection I take for the MS every week. I don't know why. I've been on that same medication for 20 years now. 20 years I've been on the same medication for MS. And now I've got nurses calling from CBS to remind me of the importance of taking that shot every week and the possible side effects and it's like, why didn't you call me? It's not like I just started this medication yesterday. I've been on it for 20 years. There must be something in it for them. They must be billing. they must be billing the insurance company for that once a month phone call. And I just ignored it, and they'll call again later today. They'll keep calling. And I tell them, I get pretty vocal with them. I says, why don't you stop calling me? Take you off your list, because I don't need you to give me any education on Avonex. I know all about Avonex. When I first started taking Avonex, it came in 2 vials. One had a powder, and the other one had a liquid. You had to mix it together and inject it in the IM way. Now they've got it. They've advanced with the Avonex, and now it's an auto injector that's more of a sub-Q injection than an IM, but they still refer to it as an IM, but the needle is nowhere near as long as it used to be when I did it the original initially. But, and I've got these people calling me from CBS telling me, trying to describe to me what Avonex is and what it does and its importance. It's like, look, lady, I've been on this thing for 20 years. You don't need to call me about it. I know all too well what Avonex is and what it does and how it works and how crummy you're going to feel a day or two afterwards after you take the shot. That's typically how it goes. Normally, you take the shot and then the next day you feel like you feel achy and sometimes you're in pain. You get these flu-like symptoms, and then by the second day those kind of subside. And then the rest of the week you're fine till the next time you take that shot, and you start that process all over again. But it's been that way for 20 years. Once in a while it gives you some bad dreams. Sometimes it gives you suicidal thoughts. But those are all known issues related to Avonex. Yesterday I was having one of those days because I just had my shot. I was almost ready to just say, forget it, bring home my 4-legged kids and forget it, because it just sometimes it just doesn't seem like it's a winnable fight. But like I said before, there's too many of us that think like that, and that's exactly how they want on us to think. They don't want us to speak out and try to make the changes that needed to be changed, and restructure the government in a way that's more more beneficial to the citizens it's supposed to represent instead of the people that it represents everywhere else. Um, I'm not going to go into that because I covered that in previous videos, about the aid and how that should be handled. But I really hope these videos, are teaching you about me a little bit, and you're always free to jump in and chime in. Like here, you can on this. Supposedly, you can ask questions. There's a chat area that I see, and you can ask questions. Feel free to ask whatever you want to ask. It, even if it's an ugly question, like I said before, I'll always be straight with you and answer questions truthfully. I won't sugarcoat nothing, but it is what it is. It's the times we're in. I'm eager to get back into court. I miss litigating. So I'm eager to get this case finalized and filed and get it moving. And let it do what it's going to do. It's going to be a tough one. There's really no middle ground, especially with the type of leadership we have. They can't compromise. They can't find middle ground amongst themselves, much less find middle ground with us average people that aren't part of their special club. The weekend is starting here at the RV park, and with that comes all the noise. So I think I'll end this video here just to before all that noise starts to kick in and affect the sound of what you're able to hear and not hear. But that gives me a chance to see how this StreamYard worked out and played in the various other platforms that I'm hoping that it's going to easily go to, so it says. But stay in touch, and if you feel like helping with some of these costs that I'm incurring, just DM me and we can work something out. I don't have any links that you can link to. I don't have any donate button set up yet. I'm sure that will be part of the website. But, or if you want to help in other ways, donating paper, donating ink cartridges, donating your time. If you have a legal background, doing some legal research, there's a lot of ways you can help, even if you don't have the funds available to help financially. This is going to require a team effort, and not just me and my 2 golden retrievers. wherever I go, and they'll follow me through this. But that's not something they can help with. But with that said, y'all have a blessed weekend, and we'll officially kick off the formal podcast next Saturday, 10 a.m. And it'll be through StreamYard, and which will supposedly send these videos to the various other platforms. Hopefully, I don't get booted for community standards violations. You know, when we get more in detailed discussion of the litigation, but we'll see. But it's time to stop talking about it, like so many of us do, and it's time to start doing. Because nothing's going to change until we start taking action. And I don't mean storming any capitals. I don't mean doing anything violent. I don't mean any of that kind of stuff. Because, like I said earlier, that's not the way we're going to win this. It's not the way we're going to make any changes. And we need to rely on the judicial branch of our government to step in and force the other branches to do their job in a way that is beneficial to us, Americans, instead of everybody else. Well, hope you all have a blessed weekend, and I'll stay in touch. Bye now.